Hello, welcome to this GreenRope webinar on PieSync's, an integration software which is now available for GreenRope users. Right from the bat, I will mention that integration is a very hollow word. It means everything and nothing at the same time. I want to make this a webinar that's going to be very to the point, showing you some practical examples of PieSync being put to good use. I'll also be very candid on when it may not so be a good idea to be using PieSync. So let's get on. My name is Frans Leijs. I work as a solutions engineer at PieSync, but that's not so important. What is important is that PieSync is a particular type of integration. It's synchronization software, which is going to be acting on the contacts that you hold in GreenRope. And it's a type of integration that's probably going to be new to most GreenRope users. It's modern syncing technology to deliver smarter, more accurate data to your software applications. Two-way synchronization, and that means that we have to look at it from both angles. How can your GreenRope database fuel other software that you're using alongside GreenRope? How can those other software applications fuel, in turn, GreenRope's database? PieSync exists because of a reason, though, right? Because what's going on? It's possible you've already seen these charts. It's the Chief Marketing Technologist blog, I believe it's called. They release a visual that gets updated every year. Essentially, it's evolved in its latest iteration to this point where you can't really read it anymore. What is on this chart? Well, it lists all kinds of available online software in the market today. Not just the number of brands, but also the number of categories has grown to an extreme point. Obviously, CRM was there since the very beginning, but now in 2018, we've got chatbots, mobile marketing, software specifically for HR staffing, project management software. So it's getting very, very dense. And it's not a bad thing to have choice and diversity. If you're watching this webinar, that means that you've selected or are considering GreenRope, because it may empower your business in a way that no other platform can. That being said, as much time is spent in GreenRope, it's not the only platform that you are active on and that you are spending your software budget on. Communication will take place in Outlook, or perhaps you're using the G Suite platform. Those platforms are what are making your smartphone run. This is your calendar syncing to this, the address book that's on your phone when you get a call, caller ID functions off of those address books. I mean, you are relying on those platforms. Where does other customer data come from? Well, it could be that you're migrating from another CRM, like Salesforce, but obviously there's plenty of other CRMs as well. Maybe you are migrating, maybe you are using different CRMs in tandem because of how your organization is structured. If you are using a voice over IP telephony system, like RingCentral, maybe you're using AirCall, maybe you're using Salesloft for all your outgoing calls that the sales reps are doing. Whatever system you're using there to do those calls or taking calls, that's another system that you're using alongside. Newsletters being sent out through a platform like MailChimp, that's another dedicated platform. Having data silos in 2019 is inevitable. Different apps will do different things in different ways, but the very one thing that ultimately will be the same in each of these apps is going to be your customer database. In an ideal world, you hold just one single source of truth, one single customer database. For instance, one that you put in your CRM. But in reality, it's a customer database that is very much siloed across all of the different apps that you're using. A frustrated customer a couple of months ago that I spoke to had been a business owner for a long time. He really saw IT evolve throughout the 90s, Y2K, up to now, having all of his software run in the cloud, accessible through the cloud. He once asked me, and it was obviously a rhetorical question, with all this different software running in the cloud, wasn't the cloud supposed to make things easier? And he was obviously referring to the issue of getting that customer database synced up with one another. Because when it comes to well, making software or even GreenRope talk to other apps specifically for contacts, well, there is already quite some integrations that are available, but they don't always accomplish exactly the right thing. This is where the word integrations is again a bit of a hollow word. So let's look at some of these in depth. So synchronizing contacts data, keeping it identical, not only in GreenRope but also in these other apps that you're using. What's available? Some syncs, if we can call it that, they would only go one way, right? Meaning that there's not going to be a feedback loop when the address data gets updated on the other side. It's just a one-way push, meaning one app will become the master app. The other one will be just a slave app reading into that. That might actually work for a lot of organizations. So if that's what you need, hey, by all means, rely on one-way syncs. What we also see is what I call these trigger action pushes. A lot of times you'll find this in workflow apps. A very typical example is Zapier. Zapier is available to GreenRope users, and there's a couple of zaps, pre-made zaps that you can be using, such as saving a Google Calendar event in GreenRope, or adding a Facebook lead ad. So once somebody fills out a form, that form gets transformed, so the contents of that form gets transformed by Zapier, and it creates a new contact in GreenRope. And that's a pretty solid use case for a platform like Zapier, because that form that's being filled out, that's not going to change anymore. That form is just a one-time thing, an event that needs to translate into creation of a contact that you're going to be subsequently working on in GreenRope. Perfect use case for Zapier. It gets different when you're looking at actually synchronizing Google contacts with GreenRope. It's not because you're creating a contact on your phone, which in turn gets created in Google Contacts. You may have a zap running to create also a contact in GreenRope. It kind of gets tricky when then you expect, if you're making a change on that contact on your phone, or imagine that you're getting a new call by an unknown number, but you actually know that's a person you already hold, so you're going to add that number to an existing contact, expecting those changes, internal changes to a contact to then seamlessly transition over into that database that you hold in GreenRope. And whatever I just explained, thinking about it in the other way around, getting changes that you're doing in GreenRope synced back to the database that you hold, a separate database that you hold in Google Contacts, that's where these zaps may not be so ideal. Another type of synchronization or integration methods won't run in real time. They will be running at irregular intervals, meaning that you either have to run a particular piece of software, you have to hit a button which is labeled sync, or it's a batch job that runs every night. Sometimes very good to work with large amount of data, but obviously it doesn't really help when you are getting a form filled out on your website, say, and you expect that phone number to be immediately available on your phone. Then a nightly batch won't work. When all else fails, you want to perhaps think about integrations as, well, let's outsource it. Let's have a third party develop this for us. Well, it will probably work. Obviously, if you write out your requirements in the right way, it will work. You're giving up a certain amount of flexibility in switching platforms, and it might become expensive over time. So at PieSync, we've put a very clear focus on contact data synchronization. Two-way, meaning that we are different from a lot of other workflow integration platforms where you can accomplish other things. You can make your software do backflips using Zapier, but actually having two databases or more kept in sync, that's not possible with these workflow automation platforms. So in PieSync, we create one single contact address book in the cloud to make sure that even if your customer data lives in separate tools, like CRM, help desk software, PieSync will match and merge the data so it looks at its most complete everywhere. It does so in real time all the time. Different software tools obviously speak different languages because they do different stuff. That means that there's different APIs, but PieSync will make abstraction of that for you. So we're a no-code, easy-to-use platform, and it will do those smart data transformations. Maybe in one app, you are storing contacts with a full name, just one single name field, and the other you have separate fields, first name, middle name, last name. So apps behave differently. So in PieSync, we make abstraction of this, and it'll just magically sync. Ultimately, what PieSync allows businesses to do is to go best of breed, right? Best of breed means that marketing can now be using that ultimate marketing automation tool that they want. Finance is a different department. They have a need for their own specialized tools. Sales wants their tools. But apps need to be still connected intelligently when it comes to contacts data. And it's only through two-way syncing that you'll have consistent contact data across all of your apps. You can stop importing, exporting messy CSV files because it's going to be PieSync that's handling that stream of data. You'll get it through real-time sync, works all the time, and it will look at deep changes inside the contact, so within the contact. And that's stuff that very often CSV imports have a hard time figuring out. Ultimately, you'll get to the 360-degree view because you're making your contacts richer than they were before, because you're synchronizing additional information from another app into GreenRope, or you're storing information in GreenRope that you're now sending across to other apps, so those apps can work better using information that they didn't have prior. So I mentioned in the beginning that I want to make this a practical presentation, and here's where I'll deliver on that promise. I'll show GreenRope being connected to other apps using PieSync, and I'll show so in different types of configurations. I'll start by showing GreenRope being connected to another CRM. That could be for different purposes. Maybe you're using them in tandem, maybe you are migrating from one platform to the other, because an import is just a picture, right? It's a snapshot, but that data will still move. I'll also show a use case of marketing. Perhaps you are using specialized email, newsletter tools, or marketing automation tools that you need your database to be talking with. I'll also cover the very essential sync that everybody should have, which is one towards your phones. If not your phones, it's at least your email client tool, which is undoubtedly one of the platforms that you're spending most of your business hours in. Finally, I'll also cover lead gen tools. I'll set up an example sync with Eventbrite, basically fetching new contacts coming in from various sources, funneling them inside of GreenRope through PieSync. So let's jump inside the platform right now and show you what PieSync is about. I'll put my camera to the side here so we can be looking at the same screen. Now, Salesforce is the first app that I promised I'd show you. If you're not using Salesforce, using different types of software, that's fine. We are compatible with many other systems. I can actually show you the full list on our website here by going to Connections. It's an ever-changing list because we are releasing a new app every week. So currently 150 plus apps, GreenRope being one of them, but as you can see, a large amount of available apps. Here's that one sync with Salesforce that I was about to do the setup with. So in Salesforce you have both leads as well as contacts as an object. In my case, I've selected for the contacts object. So I also have my GreenRope readily available here with a couple of groups. Let me just open up that contacts database, because ultimately this is what our integration, what PieSync is going to be acting on. It is essentially the contacts that, well, obviously run and fuel a whole lot of other workflows inside GreenRope, but those contacts are important. So that data is one that we're going to synchronize with Salesforce's. Maybe this is an already populated database, maybe this is an empty database. Ultimately, in PieSync, it doesn't really matter. It's a two-way sync. So the first rule in a two-way configuration is going to allow us to push contacts in Salesforce and to have them synced with GreenRope. So that means two things already. If a contact does not yet exist in GreenRope, it'll be created through the sync. If the contact already exists, PieSync will recognize that exists and will update that data. It will update so in a way where, as you can see here, the field mappings are being exchanged with one another. Say that on the side of Salesforce you have a contact with a couple of these fields filled out, and on the side of GreenRope you have other fields filled out. This is where the smart merge will come in, so you'll have richer data in the end. It's a two-way sync, so maybe the data that you hold now in GreenRope that you didn't yet have in Salesforce, it'll actually flow back into Salesforce as well. As you can see, contacts that hold an account name in Salesforce, as they are being pushed inside of GreenRope, we will spawn off creating a new company record for those contacts. In the rare occasion that you may have a phone number for a John Doe which is different, or a mobile phone number which is different on both sides, but you already have that contact, well, that means that there's a conflict. In the bidirectional sync, we can only have one mobile phone number, which is going to be the correct one. So in that case, you have to make a selection of which information to keep. When in doubt, you can also just disable this field mapping. So that's that first rule, pushing data from Salesforce into GreenRope. In the other way around, if you need data continuously funneled into Salesforce, you can have this rule active as well. I'm not sure I'll need it in this case, so I'll actually disable it for now. Other than the basic field mapping, you may have custom fields, right? This is the contact schema that you'll find in any GreenRope instance, but then again, you can create custom fields, as you may very well know, to store business relevant information. So what do you do with that? Well, that's where custom field mapping comes in. You essentially will match up whatever you hold in Salesforce. Maybe you're holding this is like a custom field that holds text. You can match it up to another custom field of the same type over in GreenRope. That's where exact field mapping comes into play. That's pretty straightforward, right? Setting up a direct mapping. Sometimes you need a little bit more than a direct data migration, because this is where obviously sometimes you may consider, well, doing a CSV or using a CSV import may just accomplish the same thing. Well, rules do help you accomplish things that are not so straightforward by a CSV import. For instance, say that in Salesforce you hold an attribute on a contact where this is a very common one, right? A checkbox, accepts mailing, yes or no. Maybe that needs to translate inside GreenRope to something completely different. Maybe that needs to translate in GreenRope to those contacts being part of a group that you call, let's see, subscribers, if you have such a group. Or maybe it needs to translate into perhaps a tag. Maybe like tag 1 is something that you will apply to all contacts where you know we can send mailings to them. This is where obviously the field mappings won't help you. It's about expressing this inside a rule to get this done. And that's all there is to setting up a sync. I can actually fire off the sync, so we can move to the next screen, which is actually the monitoring screen, where I can see how this sync is going on. This is where it's going to do a retroactive sync. So it's going to dive into my Salesforce database. It's going to look whatever data is in there, and we obviously will look at GreenRope's data set as well, because we need to know which of these contacts do I already have, which of these don't I already have, so it knows when to update, when to send information back and forth. So it's a retroactive sync. So this is reading into this database first, then it's going to read into this database and do the merging. So I'm going to get this. I'm going to give this a little bit of time, and I will get back to this in a later stage. In the meantime, I'll just quickly cover this Outlook sync that I have running actively. I had it also. I already had it running a couple of days ago, where, as you can see here, because of me setting up that sync, a bunch of contacts got created in GreenRope because they simply did not yet exist there, as well as contacts that I had in my GreenRope were created and pushed down into Outlook. And this is a running sync, so I don't really have to go to this screen. This runs all on the background. Let's have a look at how I set this up in particular. So here I chose to allow my personal contacts that I hold in my Outlook. I could have filtered them by a folder or category, but I chose not to. I have a pretty clean contacts database. Any contact that's on my phone or in my Outlook contacts, off it can go into GreenRope, but it's being pushed into my personal group. In the other way around, I'm having contacts that I create in GreenRope, or that through some sort of automation in GreenRope are being pushed into my personal group. all of those definitely are being pushed into my own Outlook folder as well. I'm also giving them a little label called sync. In field mapping, I don't think I've done anything in particular. I was just happy with the basic schema of how this information is being exchanged. All of the information that you're seeing on a contact, such as the notes field, all of that is being synced two-way. So whether you're making those changes on the go on your phone, like leaving a note in Outlook, it would immediately send over that note, sync it with GreenRope. So if you've left a note in GreenRope, that note will also be available on your phone, and you can make changes on either system. It's a beautiful, elegant two-way sync here. Looking at that Salesforce sync here, as you can see, it created a bunch of contacts over in my GreenRope. So I'll go ahead and refresh this screen here. There they are in the all of the contacts, and you can see here there's a couple of tags which have been added. Now that's because I actually set up that rule, right? You remember the rule where anybody who's accepting mailing got a tag attached to their name. So that's why some of these contacts have tags. And I could be making changes, right? I could be making a change on a contact. Let me be very complete here and even open up my Salesforce instance so we can see that sync in action. Bear with me as I log in. So I obviously chose for the contact object. These are my contact, it's demo data. So if I were to make a change here on Kenneth, let's look at the details of Kenneth. I were to say that this Kenneth works as a solutions engineer. Save. I can go check out my activity log, and it will put an update on Kenneth. Not only was Kenneth created, but it also updated Kenneth. So let's have a look at what Kenneth looks like in my database here. Let's see whether the job title was enriched. Yeah, you can see here solutions engineer. But maybe Kenneth prefers to be named a sales engineer. I can go ahead and save that, which in turn will trigger an update. So if this screen here, you don't have to have this screen open. We essentially will automatically pull for changes, but you can give the sync a little nudge by hitting sync again now. It's going to register another update to Kenneth, as you can see, third update there, which is essentially synchronizing back that updated information into the record that you held in Salesforce. So that's the two-way sync in action. Let's see that Kenneth is now a sales engineer. In details, there is sales engineer. Then I mentioned setting up another sync between GreenRope and a marketing app like MailChimp. Let's add a new connection because I did not yet have that one. Here you can see the full list of available apps. Let's type in GreenRope to begin with, because that's the one app that we want to connect with. Lots of available apps here. I'm going to go ahead and choose MailChimp, since that's an app that perhaps some of you are familiar with. If you haven't connected GreenRope before, it's just a matter of providing these credentials. I've already done so in the past. With MailChimp, it's also a matter of logging into MailChimp and then choosing a list. MailChimp, you hold different lists, so I may have, here's my test list one, if I still have that one. And I'm going to set up a sync with GreenRope here. In fact, since I've done a Salesforce sync where I indicated who accepts mailing, and I gave them a tag. I'm actually going to use that tag now to define who can go off into MailChimp, because it's not common practice to be synchronizing just anybody into MailChimp, right? You want to respect those opt-ins. So I'm going to only select those contacts that hold tag 1, and I'm going to send them in MailChimp, and since they are subscribed according to Salesforce, I can actually subscribe them to this list. And this rule just now got expanded in a couple of, well, 2 features actually. The undo toggle, meaning if I take away the tag in GreenRope, they will not be subscribed anymore in MailChimp. So that's the sync performing an update then. In the other way around, it actually does something beautiful as well, which is reading into whoever is already on my MailChimp list and retroactively syncing that up, finding the equilibrium again, cleaning up the data, if so you will, looking at who is subscribed. If they are subscribed, they're going to be given the tag in GreenRope. If they did not yet exist in GreenRope, we're going to create them and give them that tag. So that's one rule that will already accomplish quite a bit in synchronizing two siloed systems. For that matter, I don't necessarily need this rule anymore because it's being taken up by this one here. Maybe you can think about things like emails bouncing, so email addresses not being correct anymore. When that happens in MailChimp will move these contacts to a list of cleaned. Maybe that's something that you want to have reflected inside GreenRope. Perhaps you want to update a little bit of a custom field where you want to put something like MailChimp cleaned or something, so that at least you are aware of that. I'm going to be selecting GreenRope here as my master database. Obviously, we only sync contacts that have an email address. The field mapping here, a little less fields than we saw previously with our Outlook and Salesforce thing. That's because in MailChimp, a lot of the data attributes that you can use in your emailings, well, they're very much user created. So you can add field mappings, and we definitely encourage you to, so that you can take whatever field that you've created yourself and match it up to a field that you hold on the side of GreenRope. In turn, perhaps email or like MailChimp has a couple of landing pages created, and in those landing pages you are collecting stuff like a birthday, you are collecting preferences, product choices, whether or not they want to participate, whether or not they're coming to your event. You want to push that back into GreenRope, you can by setting up those mappings. This is a thing that I can start off as well. I'll leave that one be for now, because I want to end off with that sync on Eventbrite to just cover up the whole array of different apps. So Eventbrite is one of our one-way syncs. I'll match it up to GreenRope. And similar to where in MailChimp I selected a list, in Eventbrite I'm going to be selecting an event. Let me log into Eventbrite real quick. I allow. This is the organization that I hold in Eventbrite. I'm confirming that. And here's the event that I am collecting new attendees for. So this is one of the examples where maybe Zapier can already help you with this, or like these one-way pushes can help you with this. But that will create a contact, but it won't. It's going to be tricky to perform those continuous updates. And the tough part is really matching up all of those fields, because you're collecting a lot of information as people are registering for your event. You want to make sure that you don't let any of that information go to waste. So it needs to go inside the right fields, and that's something that you can define here in the field mapping. Well, we actually really do it automatically for you. It's all there, and you can include other field mappings as well. So if you are collecting if you're selling different types of tickets for your event, you can have that also go inside your own GreenRope proprietary information. Maybe you want to not only check whether attendees are registering, but you also want to check subsequently whether they've checked in. So if they actually check in, let's give them a tag. Well, I had tag 2. you may want to give them a little bit more of an explicit name. If they have checked in, they'll be given the tag. Or maybe you can think about it the other way around. So as long as they've not checked in, they'll be given a tag. As soon as they do check in, this undo toggle will take away that tag, and it could be given another tag. So this in turn is important because this can help you drive GreenRope automations. The cool thing about these rules is that you can set them up whichever way you want to, because this will help you really take control over your GreenRope data attributes, because they in turn trigger off automations. I mean, out of the 150 different apps that we offer, those were just 4 examples, so that's way too little. We're really curious to see what our customers are coming up with, right? There's so many apps to choose from. Anybody's SaaS stack, software as a service stack, will look somewhat differently. So we're very curious to see how GreenRope users are now going to be able to synchronize their data back and forth with any of these apps here. You're not left to your own devices. We do have a live chat, which is available here at the bottom right of your screen. In fact, let me quickly go to a slide here where I can cover that live support is provided from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. if you are on Europe mainland. We operate out of Belgium. On East Coast, that's 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. We will reply within 24 hours, oftentimes way faster than that. We can do calls. We have a Calendly scheduling tool, and we have a very extensive help center as well. Thank you so much for having attended this webinar on GreenRope's new integration with PieSync. We're happy to take any questions moving forward, and do give us a try, because we offer 14-day trials at piesync.com. Have a great day. Bye.